Genesis 13, Abraham and Lot. Abraham went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. He went on his journey from south, even to Bethel, onto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen and Abram's cattle, and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Pezerites dwelled then in the land. And Abraham said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the part of the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. Before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto the Zor. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt in the land of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he built there an altar unto the Lord. Following the messy debacle in Egypt, Genesis tracks Abraham's return trip back to north into the land of Canaan. Now that they have been expelled from Pharaoh's palace, Abraham and his nephew Lot are incredibly wealthy in livestock, silver, and gold. But their sudden massive wealth introduces a brand new crisis. This chapter is all about the internal family conflict, greed, and stark contrast in characters. Here's the deep context behind Genesis 13. The land can't hold them both. When Abraham and Lot returned to the hills of Canaan, they hit a hard physical limitation. The text notes that the land was not able to bear them. That dwell together. Because they both have massive herds of sheep and cattle, sheep, goats, and cattle, they are competing for the exact same grazing pasture and water wells. In a nomadic herding culture, this is a recipe for war. Sure enough, verse 7 notes that the bitter friction explodes between Abraham, Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. The text drops another crucial reminder here, and the Canaanites and the Pezerites dwell in the same land. This is a brilliant piece of staging. The narrator is saying the local pagans are watching them. If Abraham's family devolves into internal civil war over the grass, they will expose their vulnerability and be completely wiped out by the surrounding tribes. To stop the fighting, Abraham pulls Lot aside and makes an incredibly noble countercultural movement. As the elder patriarch of the family, Abraham had the absolute legal right to claim the best land for himself and dictate where Lot could go. Instead, he waives his rights entirely. He points out over the horizon and says, "Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, I will go to the right. If thou depart to the right hand, I will go to the left." Abraham is modeling the true trust in God after trying to manipulate his way to safety in Egypt and failing. He now steps back and says, "I don't need to grab the best land for myself to survive. My destiny is in God's hands, not the dirt." Lot stands up, looks across the landscape, and acts purely on physical sight and greed. Lot chooses the lush eastern plains and moves his tent right up to the gates of the notorious city of Sodom. The author uses dramatic irony here. To the ancient reader, the name Sodom instantly signaled catastrophic judgment. Lot thinks he's making a brilliant, lucrative business decision to secure his family's future, but he's actually working straight into a spiritual and physical trap that will eventually cost him absolutely everything. The moment Lot packs up his tent and walks away, Abraham is left standing alone in the dusty, rocky, less than desirable highlands of Canaan. To a human observer, it looks like Abraham is just lost the lottery. But look at what happens the moment Lot leaves. God immediately steps into the scene to talk to Abraham. Verse 14, he tells him to lift up his eyes and look north, south, east, and west. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. Arise and walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. In the ancient Near East, walking through the length of the breadth of a piece of land was a legal ritual for taking formal ownership of a property. God is telling the lonely nomadic outsider, Lot thinks he's grabbed the best piece for himself, but I'm giving you this entire continent to your family. The chapter ends with Abram moving his tent to the plains of Merim and Hebron and building an altar to the Lord. He's content waiting on God's timing. Meanwhile, Lot officially integrated into the plains of Sodom. When you step into Genesis 14, a massive multinational world war is going to break out in the exact region, and Lot's choice to live near Sodom is going to drag him right into the crosshairs of a terrifying international crisis. That's crazy. Just curious. Yes, is the exact moment when the Jewish people refer to Israel as the promised land. They are pointing directly back to the specific sequence and events in Genesis. To understand this ancient story functions as a foundational blueprint for Jewish identity, history, and theology. We have to look at the legal covenant context of how that land was given. The Abrahamic covenant. In Jewish tradition, the promise made here from the Abrahamic covenant, God doesn't just mention the land as a casual gift, he binds himself to it through a series of formal legal contracts across Genesis 12, 13, 15, and 17. The promise is structurally built on three unbreakable pillars: the land, the physical geographical home, the land of Canaan and Israel; the seed, the permanent line of physical descendants, the Jewish people; and the global purpose to bring the ethical monotheism and justice to the world. When the Jewish people look at their history, the land is not merely as a piece of real estate or a political refuge. It is viewed as a sacred stage explicitly designated by God for them to live out their unique laws, culture, and calling. There's a fascinating legal nuance in the Hebrew text regarding how the land is given. Even though God tells Abraham, "To thee I will give it, and thy seed forever," later biblical books like Leviticus clarify a massive theological point. The land ultimately belongs to God. In Leviticus 25:23, God explicitly states, "And the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. For ye are strangers and sojourners with me." Under Jewish theology, the Jewish people were granted an eternal deed of tenancy and stewardship, but their ability to peacefully live in the land was conditional upon their behavior. If they practice injustice, idolatry, or cruelty, the land would vomit them out into exile, which happened during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE. However, because the original promise to Abraham was unconditional, the text maintains that deep covenant tie to the land could never be permanently broken. When you read Genesis 13, Abram doesn't actually own a single square inch of the land he is walking on. He is a nomadic sojourner living in temporary tents surrounded by powerful Canaanite tribes. For the later generations of Israelites who suffered hundreds of years of slavery in Egypt and then spent 40 years wandering through the harsh deserts with Moses, reminding themselves of Genesis 13 was an anchor of survival. When they felt hopeless, their leaders would point back to the ancient promise made to their ancestors. Remember the oath he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It gave a displaced, traumatized people a concrete sense of destiny and destination to march toward. As you keep reading the Old Testament, watch how the name of a specific piece of geography evolves based on Abraham's family tree. Genesis is called the land of Canaan after Ham's descendants. Exodus, it becomes the land of Israel, named after Abraham's grandson, Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Later history, the region became known as Judea and eventually Palestine, a name imposed centuries later by the Roman Empire after crushing a Jewish revolt. To this day, whether in religious prayers recited 3 times a day facing Jerusalem, or in modern day geopolitical identity, the words God spoke to Abram while he stood alone in the rocky highlands of Hebron remain the spiritual and historical anchor of the Jewish connection to that land.